There are growing calls for a mandatory licensing system to stop irresponsible builders from closing a company and setting up a new one with a different name. The practice is called phoenixing. It's thought that homeowners have lost up to £14.3 billion to traders who've done this in the past 5 years. Let's speak now to Iona Stewart-Richardson from the Federation of Master Builders, who are calling for this mandatory licensing system. Good morning, Iona.
Morning. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you on, Iona. For anybody who's still unfamiliar with what exactly this is, how would you describe it to our listeners?
The art of phoenixing or the licensing issue altogether?
Phoenixing.
So, in my experience, for example, I have had victims of rogue builders come to me from Northern Ireland all the way down south. Now, there have been some cases where companies have scammed someone up north, closed the company down, liquidated, seized all responsibility, not been able to give any kind of financial reimbursement to the victim, and then gone down south, set up exactly the same company with a slightly different name, and done exactly the same thing to people down there.
And with that in mind, what exactly is it that you're calling for?
So what we want a mandatory licensing system for small building companies, so that there would be basically a public register so that people could go on and they could see if you have the qualifications and if you're up to scratch. Every other sector, first of all, you wouldn't get in a car with someone who didn't have a license. It is exactly the same thing. And the shocking thing as well is that nearly half of adults in the UK did not know that builders, are not licensed. So obviously trust and public confidence is going to be on the floor, with 1 in 5 homeowners also holding back on domestic work. It backs that up. And so how we're going to get Britain building again, I just don't know. This is something that's affecting everyone across the country. It's really not good. We lost 11.2 billion in the last year because of people holding back on building work.
Does it not exist already? I'm surprised to hear that there's not something in place. You hear about check of trade and other systems like that, but is there nothing official in place right now?
No, absolutely not. So victims get no recourse. There is nothing that they can do. The court system is very lengthy. You can only claim up to 10 grand in a small claims court when most of these people have put their entire life savings. Most of the people I've spoken to, and I've spoken to about 100, have spent over 30 grand on average. So a small claims court is not an option. And there is no recourse. They can go to their local MP. They can't advise. The lawyers, a lot of law firms actually turn around, and I'm pleased to hear it, are honest with victims and say, look, we can't do anything about this because the police don't want to touch it. The banks don't want to touch it for fraud. So ultimately it leaves it down to trading standards, who are highly under-resourced. And they only, they're not looking into prosecutions. They had under 50. I think they had 47 prosecutions last year for rogue builders. That is not okay. That is not normal. Complaints aren't even being looked into. They only look into complaints if they've had more than one person complaining about that same builder. Then it will warrant, the cost of looking into it and investigating it. And then what's even worse is that trading standards, if they do get to the stage where they prosecute these builders, they end up with suspended sentences and a £500 fine. So nothing.
The government are unequivocal about this. So a government spokesman said there's no clear evidence that a licensing scheme would improve standards, and anybody affected can contact their local authority, who have new powers to hand out tougher fines against businesses who rip off consumers. We've already announced £25 million in funding to tackle misuse of Phoenix companies, and we'll work closely across government to crack down on the issue. What would you say to that?
Yeah, do you know what's really funny? That came out yesterday, and I just thought to myself, I was so cross, because I thought they're just not hitting the mark. They should be focusing. Every other sector is licensed, okay? Every other sector. And actually, when you're doing a house build, every part of that process is licensed, from the lecky coming in to check the gas meter. Why does it fall at the hurdle of the builder, the last bit, and leave the consumer with no protection? The government can say what they want about this and about it being red tape. It's just excuses. Ultimately, people across the country, this is affecting everyone.
Well, we just had a text in actually on that. Yeah, saying, happened to me. I sued my builder, won £10,000. He's never paid it to me. He now operates under a different name. There's nothing I can do, says Joe in Birmingham.
Thank you, Joe. Exactly. And this is what happens. And it just breaks my heart, because I know so many of these victims who have lost their livelihoods, their entire life savings, and for the government to arrogantly sort of say, oh, well, we've, funded some more stuff with vapes and stuff, to look into vapes and dodgy sales of things like that. No, this is something. I'm sorry, the focus needs to be on small building companies, licensing the sector. This is an industry that already is not respected. We did research last year. Less than half of parents, 37%, would recommend their child takes up a career in construction. people, they don't want to enter it. Don't you think if it was licensed, people would have slightly more respect for it and more trust? Because then they'd have a bit more faith and they'd know where to go.
Iona, there's another specific question here as well. Why limit the rogue builder licensing to small companies? Larger developers do the same, setting up new companies for a particular development, then use that as a defence for not fulfilling obligations. Martin in High Wycombe sent us that question.
Okay, good question, Mark. So, very good question. So, the way it would work is that all building companies would be licensed, but you would pay to a trade body or to a regulatory body, depending on the size of your company. So small companies are not going to be paying what the big companies are paying. It will be, decided upon risk and things like that, and obviously the size of the company. So yeah, the big boys will have to also pay, and yeah, of course.
Yeah. So just to be clear about this, how difficult is it right now for a homeowner doing a bit of due diligence before they employ a builder to check their past and find out if they've ever registered a new company? How simple is that through Companies House, for instance?
Well, good question. It is simple on Companies House. Yeah, you can work it out, but you sort of need slightly investigative skills. It's not obvious. There's no open register. So yeah, you can do a certain amount of research. However, these rogue builders are skilled scammers. A lot of them are grooming people. We have there's one victim I know who moved house, and the mover recommended the brother for some building work and then scammed her of 35 grand. So we can go to reviews, we can go and we can keep searching and looking. Of course you can dig, but ultimately there is no recourse when things go wrong, and that is the issue. If you were a lawyer, you would be struck off if you did someone over in that industry, and it should be the same with builders.
Is there an argument at the other end of this debate? Is it too easy, perhaps, to set up a company in another name? Is that where regulation would?
Yes, it is. It is very easy. And do you know what the government will say? They'll probably say, well, we've introduced new powers with Company House under the Conservative government. They've just come in. And yeah, they'll tell you who a director is, but they won't tell you if they're qualified. They're not massive changes. It's not going to make a massive difference. You're not going to see a little red box coming up going, don't hire them. They've had 8 companies over the last 2 years. But if you choose a Federation of Master Builder member, one of our builders, they have been vetted. So we have an in-house inspection team who go round and they check out all of the work that any prospective members and our current members are doing. They also check things like health and safety. They check you've got insurance. They check if you have opened up 18 companies in the last 5 minutes. They check your financial history, your trading history. So we put those checks through to then okay you as a builder under our banner, under our name. So we are the closest to policing the construction system, the construction industry as you can get.
Passionate stuff, Iona. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time this morning. Iona Stewart-Richardson there from the Federation of Master Builders, calling for a mandatory licensing system to stop the act known as phoenixing. It's now 8:32.